Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhigyaswarat Tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yatsurayah Tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha Dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukadamritadrava sanyutam Pibata Bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. So we now enter the 14th chapter of the 9th Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. So far in the 9th Skandha, we have seen the Solar Dynasty. We saw beginning with Vivaswan, the sun deity, who gave birth to Vaivasvata Manu. And this Vaivasvata Manu then in turn had a son called Ikshvaku. He had many sons. Ikshvaku was the main son. And the dynasty of Ikshvaku became the Solar Dynasty. So that completes the whole lineage of Solar Dynasty with the last chapter after the story of Ramayana, and then the lineage of Kusha going all the way till the time of Parikshit. The whole Solar Dynasty was given. Now Shuka Brahmarshi begins to narrate the Lunar Dynasty. So if you remember, in the very first chapter of this Skandha, we also saw a very peculiar story where before Ikshvaku was born, the king Manu had a son called Sudyumna. He was actually first a daughter called Ila. The daughter was changed to a son called Sudyumna, and then he again became a woman due to the curse of Parvati, and therefore he again became Ila. So he had a very confusing life. We saw and how the whole messing with gender and nature is not new. It was done before and it resulted in suffering for this particular king through confusion. But in the meanwhile, we also saw that when he was a woman, after being made a woman by this curse of Parvati, he met Budha, the deity presiding over the planet Budha, which is Mercury, and through them he had a son called Pururava, and this Pururava became a king. So that Pururava is the head of the Lunar Dynasty, because the Budha, that is the deity presiding over Mercury, Budha is Mercury, so it's called Budavar. That's why is the day corresponding to Mercury, which is Wednesday, and therefore Budha is the deity presiding over the planet Mercury, and he is known to be the son of moon god Soma, and therefore because he is the son of moon and he in turn is the father of Pururava, and the dynasty of Pururava is called as Lunar Dynasty, Chandravamsham. And this is important because just as in Solar Dynasty Lord Sri Ram appeared, in the Lunar Dynasty Chandravamsham is where Sri Krishna appears, which we will come to in the next Skandha, 10th Skandha. So now we begin the narration of Lunar Dynasty. Shuka Brahmarshi says, Brahma, who first came forth, as we have seen, when there was no creation, Brahma alone came forth, and he brought forth some Prajapatis and Rishis. We saw this already in the 4th Skandha and so on. One of them was a sage called Atri, and he is a great sage, and even today there is a Gotra called Atreya, which comes from the sage Atri. We saw that he had 3 sons. One of them was Durvasa, the other was Dattatreya, and the third was Soma, who is the deity presiding over moon. So we are now taking up Soma, the deity presiding over the moon, who is born from Atri, the sage. So it is said that Atri gave birth to Soma. And then there is a very interesting story here, which has some astrological symbolism from what I can see. So it is said that Soma, the deity presiding over moon, he conducted a major sacrifice, and all the devatas were invited, which included Brihaspati, who is the deity presiding over Jupiter. And Brihaspati had a beautiful wife called Tara. So Brihaspati is the guru of the devas. We've already seen him come even in the 8th Skandha, very wise sage who can know the past, present and future. And therefore, this Brihaspati is the guru of the Devas. He is also the deity presiding over Jupiter. That is why Thursday is called Guru Var or Brihaspati Var, because he is the guru of the Devas, who is called Brihaspati. So it is said that Brihaspati has a very beautiful wife called Tara, and Soma, the deity presiding over the moon, he falls in love with Tara. So we have always seen how moon is associated with emotions, and even now many romantic songs and so on invoke the moon. So the moon is always associated with passion, and that's what is symbolized here. The deity presiding over moon falls in love inappropriately with the wife of Brihaspati, his own guru, and he abducts her and he takes her away. And because of that, there is a war that happens between the Devas and the moon deity, who is helped by the demons now. So, this is all very interesting. It's very similar to the story of Troy, which comes in Greek mythology, where the whole war happens due to the wife of the king being abducted by the other kingdom's prince and all the rest. It's very similar here that Soma abducts the wife of Brihaspati. And Soma himself, being a deva, he actually ought not to do this, but he, out of his passion, he abducts Tara, who's a very beautiful woman, and he takes her away. And Shukracharya, who is the teacher of the demons, who always has enmity towards Brihaspati, he helps Soma. So this is all very interesting to see. There is nothing here in terms of anything to do with Bhagavan, but there is a lot to do with the way in which the human mind works, the pettiness, the passion, the lust, and the enmity, and the conflicts and wars that come out of it. All of this is displayed in this story. So, again, Soma, the deity presiding over the moon, he is passionately falling in love inappropriately with the wife of his guru Brihaspati, who is Tara. He abducts her and goes away. And because Brihaspati is the guru of the Devas, the guru of the demons, who's Shukracharya, always has enmity towards him. So even though Soma is a Devata, he is getting help from the demons because Shukracharya is the guru of the demons and he wants to settle scores with Brihaspati. So it all is very much like the politicking happening in the world, where Shukracharya therefore gives the army of demons to help Soma defend, while Brihaspati enlists the army of the Devas to attack Soma in order to get his wife back. And Brihaspati is helped here by Indra, and it is also said Lord Shiva himself comes and helps, because it is said that Brihaspati's father Angiras gave some important wisdom to Shiva. This is there in the Puranas, and therefore, because of that, Shiva also helps Brihaspati along with Indra, and all the Devas fight. It is said that it's a very bloody war that happens between the Devas and Asuras, and this war goes on for a long time, and finally Brahma intervenes. Because Brahma is the grandfather of Soma, he directly goes to Soma and he says, "Stop this war, you have to give back Tara. What you have done is inappropriate. Tara is Brihaspati's wife. Stop this war, stop all this killing, and let Tara belong to her husband." So Soma, because his grandfather now comes and says this, the war is stopped, and after a lot of calamities and a lot of destruction, the war ends, and the queen Tara is given back to Brihaspati. But there is a problem, little problem, because Tara is pregnant by now. And when Tara is seen as pregnant by Brihaspati, Brihaspati is not sure about this child. So he says, "Have this child. I'm not going to punish you for having this child. You can have this child because I want a son anyway." And then she goes ahead and delivers a baby who happens to be a son. And the son is very beautiful and very radiant. And when the son is born, both Brihaspati and Soma claim him because Brihaspati is the husband of Tara, but Tara was also with Soma. And after Soma had kidnapped Tara, Tara was with Soma for some time before the war happened, and then Soma returned Tara to Brihaspati. So this happens for a while where there is a fight again. Now, just a claim over the son as the father between Brihaspati and Soma, that is between Jupiter and Moon, let's say. And finally, Brahma again comes and resolves this conflict by going and asking Tara directly, because Tara refuses to say who is the father. The mother, who alone can tell, she refuses to say who is the father. And but when finally Brahma comes and asks her, she sheepishly admits that she in fact had the son with Soma. So when Soma abducted her and they were together, it is said that Tara also engaged in sexual intercourse with Soma, and they had this son. So this son is called Budha, and the sun is radiant, and therefore Budha is this deity that is said to to preside over Mercury. So this is the story. Now, on the face of it, the story is very interesting. It is, as I said, similar to the Greek myth of Troy, and how the whole Trojan horse war happened because of the abduction of a queen who was married and all the rest. Similarly, here there is a major war between Devas and Asuras because of a woman, and it turns out there is all kinds of juicy events here: abduction, illicit love, child born with confusion over the father, and all the rest. But when one looks at it, all of this also has some symbolism from an astronomical perspective, which I'm no expert in, but there are references to this given by many. So it is said that Jupiter, who is Brihaspati, Soma, who is Moon, and Budha, who is Mercury, are all astronomically related and astrologically related. And in fact, it is said that Mercury is a planet that was born due to a collision between one of the moons of Jupiter with Jupiter. So, this is something that is speculated, that is not known for sure. So, it is perhaps symbolically represented that Buddha being born to the union of Soma with the wife of Jupiter. Wife of Jupiter represents the power of Jupiter. So, always in symbolism, the power of a person is symbolized as his wife. So Shiva's wife is Shakti, who is the power of Shiva, and so on. So here also, Brihaspati's wife is Tara, who is the power of Jupiter. And when the power of Jupiter collides with Moon, through that collision, it is said that Mercury is born. This is the theory that is given in astronomy by some, and perhaps that is what is symbolized by this illicit affair between Soma and Tara, because Tara is the wife of Brihaspati, the power of Brihaspati, and Soma is the moon, and through their union, this planet Budha or Mercury is born. So that's the inner symbolism from an astronomical perspective, but there is also the human perspective here of how passion and lust and enmity, all of this leads to so much destruction and confusion. So Shukracharya simply engaged in war with Brihaspati because of his enmity, and he took sides simply to settle scores out of his ego. And Soma was arrogant because of his ego in abducting his own guru's wife. And Tara, the wife of Jupiter, she engages in inappropriate activity. So all of this goes to show how a total mess is created when one is caught in ego. So that can be the other way to simply read the story. It's a very entertaining story that is uh, again the basis of Troy as well, a very similar story, perhaps just parallel or perhaps source from this. Either way, it's an exactly similar story which has been made into movies and so on. So it's a very juicy story, more bizarre than many stories that are even portrayed in movies and so on. But there is the two aspects that are there beyond the story. One is the symbolism from an astronomical perspective, and the other is, of course, the lesson from a perspective of what ego can do, the kind of destruction ego brings about through its activities. So, in any case, this all leads to Buddha, as we see, the deity presiding over Mercury. And then, tying it back to the first chapter of the ninth Skandha, we saw that Buddha fell in love with this woman who was Ila, who was originally Sudyumna. So, we saw Sudyumna became a woman, and he was a very beautiful woman now. And through their union, the king Pururava was born, and the king Pururava became the forefather of the Lunar Dynasty, because as we see, he is born to Buddha and Buddha is born to Moon. Therefore, he is the grandson of Moon, and therefore he is the head of the Lunar Dynasty. So, just as Solar Dynasty starts with Ikshvaku, the son of uh, Manu, who is the grandson of Sun, that is the grandson of Vivaswan, the sun deity. Here, Pururava is the grandson of Moon deity, and therefore he starts the Lunar Dynasty. So, Pururava, it is said, then we see the story of Pururava, and Pururava was such a good looking and popular and charming and excellent king that his glory reached even the heavenly realm, it is said. And Urvashi, who is considered the most beautiful woman in the heavenly realm, she fell in love with just listening about Pururava. So it is said she descends to earth, and as soon as she sees Pururava, they both fall in love. And then Pururava wants to marry her. Urvashi then says, I have three conditions. This is again a very interesting story in this chapter again, which is a very curious story, in fact. So Urvashi says, I have three conditions. One is I'll eat only ghee, which is clarified butter. Second is I have two sheep with me, or two rams, depending on the translation, but it can be a sheep or a ram. They're all similar. So she says, I have two sheep with me and they have to be protected all the time. That's the second condition. And the third condition is, I shall not see you naked except while in sexual intercourse. So these are the three conditions Urvashi puts. And bizarre as it may sound, Pururava is very fine with it because he is so in love with Urvashi. He says yes to it. And it is said that they lived together happily for some time. But meanwhile, it is said that the heavenly realm was unhappy that Urvashi had gone down to earth. So they devised a plan to get her back. So it is said that they got to know of these conditions. So the Gandharvas from the heavenly realm, they go down and they kidnap the two sheep when the king is sleeping. And very curiously, it is said that Urvashi complains immediately, my sheep are gone. You have to go get them, otherwise you are no man. And so he hurries out immediately without even having the time to dress up. And then he goes and grabs the two sheep. But when he comes back, the Gandharvas shine bright light, and it is said that he is not wearing any clothes. And because the condition Urvashi had was that I shall not see you without clothes ever other than when we are together. And now that he is just coming back from grabbing the sheep, and she sees him like this, she says, you have broken the condition, so I'm going to go back. And so now Pururava is very distraught. He is very unhappy that he is not able to have the company of Urvashi, with whom he had fallen in love with passion. And therefore, he is running here and there. And then finally, he bumps into her once on the banks of a river, Saraswati River, it is said. And he pleads with her. He says, O Urvashi, please do not leave me in misery like this. You have to come to me because I am here suffering without you. So all of this shows again the aspect of ego, how when it gets in attachment, infatuation, and it takes that infatuation to be love, then it only leads to misery. And this infatuation is what's portrayed here, and this can be portrayed very intensely in the case of this kind of attachment or infatuation between man and woman. But such attachment is also found between parents and children, between one's with one's wealth, with one's career, with one's possession, all the rest. So anything where there is blind attachment, it leads to misery. And the most intense attachment, of course, happens when there is this kind of a romantic attachment, and that leads to the most intense misery. And that is what is portrayed as a lesson through this whole story, that Urvashi is completely putting this king Pururava in misery. He was ruling very beautifully. He was famous, as we saw. He was very charming. He had very good reputation. But then Urvashi comes, and because of the beauty of Urvashi, which is unparalleled, he falls for her, and in the process, he leaves everything. He ignores his royal duties. He is completely in love with her, which is not love but infatuation. And because of that, when he is left by her, he is suffering in misery, and he is crying like a forlorn lover. And so he says, please don't leave me. Now Urvashi says, taking pity on him but actually chastising him, he says, look at you, you are not acting like a man, you are constantly attached to me in this way. So she is now in fact chastising and saying, giving him actually wise words of wisdom. She says, if you get attached to women like this, then you will be only manipulated by women, because the women who are immoral, who are only drawn to your wealth or drawn to your power, they will easily manipulate you. They will not even hesitate to kill you. And they are only interested in power and wealth and possession and comforts. And you will make yourself vulnerable to all of them. Therefore, please don't do such things anymore. I have to go anyway, but because of your request, I will give you this allowance that we can meet one night every year where we can be together. So she says that and goes, and then he waits at the end of the year, and she comes, and then they are together for one night, and then she leaves again. So he is, after this sequence happens, he is distraught again. So he starts pleading with the devatas and praying and so on, and nothing happens. And then Urvashi herself says, maybe you should appeal to the heavenly realm, to Gandharvas, and they can do something. And the Gandharvas then, they create a woman who looks exactly like Urvashi and give her to him. And he mistakenly takes her to be Urvashi and is infatuated for some time. But then after some time he realizes, especially when they are about to engage in sexual union, he realizes that this is not Urvashi, even though she looks like Urvashi, and therefore he is distraught again. And then he discards her, this woman, and then he engages in a big yajna, a sacrificial fire. But again, the sacrificial fire is invoking simply to get Urvashi back. So all of this goes to show, again, this whole story is a very curious story, but it goes to show a simple lesson, that one who is a great king, even a very powerful king, one who is ruling piously, one who has got everything sorted out, just one infatuation can get him completely lost. So that is what it shows here. Because of this attachment to Urvashi, even though she herself warned against it, he is not able to see it. So he is using all his powers, and he is even doing yajna. The whole purpose of sacrifice is to propitiate the Supreme Being. But then, of course, in the Vedas too, there are many yajnas which are given for material goals, such as having a son, and for kingdom and wealth and so on. So those who are caught in attachment in karma kanda, as it is said, they engage in such activities even through yajna, and that's what Pururava does. He engages in yajna simply for a material goal, and he is not able to attain that, but it is said that after death he attains the realm of the heavenly abode, the Gandharvas, because he constantly propitiated the yajna in order to be with the heavenly woman. So this is the story, which again goes to show how Pururava was very limited in his conception. So instead of attaining the eternal abode through surrendering to the Supreme Being, he was attached to Urvashi, and because of that, his whole yajna, his whole effort was only towards attaining her. And in the process, the best he could achieve was simply going to the realm where Urvashi is, which is called the Swargaloka or heavenly realm, which is again a temporary abode where one can enjoy for some time and come back, but not a place of eternal liberation. So that is the destiny of Pururava. So here it is, there is one beautiful verse that Shuka Brahmarshi says that actually during the time of Pururava, the Vedas was simply Pranava, which is the Om. The only deity worshipped was Narayana. Fire was the only mode of worship, and there was no division of Varna. Everybody was of the same Varna. So it says, Eka Pura Vedaha Pranavaha Sarvavangmayaha Devo Narayano Na Anya Eko Agnir Varna Evacha. So this was a beautiful description of the source of everything. So Vedas, which are 4 in number, Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva, it is said they were all simply in the form of Pranava, which is Om. Similarly, there are many deities, but the principal deity is Narayana, who is the only deity worshipped, it is said. Fire also is said only one fire. So there are many types of fire, it is said, through Vedic processes that are invoked, but there was only one. And Varna, which is the division of society, was not there at the time. Everybody was qualified to do every activity. And that's the situation when Pururava was ruling. But of course, Pururava was caught in his own attachment, so he didn't recognize any of this. And therefore, he was only after Urvashi, and he left the body. So with this chapter ends. But Pururava is the father of the Solar Dynasty, the Chandra Vamsham. So he had sons even during all this drama. He also had sons through Urvashi. He had in fact 6 sons with her during all the time they had spent together. And these 6 sons will be given in the next chapter, and from them, how the Chandra Vamsham or the Lunar Dynasty proceeds forward all the way to the appearance of Krishna will be the content of the remaining of 9 Skandha, leading to the appearance of Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.